The tension. You could slice it with a knife. The heat from the studio lights wasn't just physical, it was political. Two silhouettes. Two legacies. One battlefield. Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old blonde firebrand in a navy blazer, sat poised like a loaded weapon. Polished. Ambitious. Eyes sharp as razors. She wasn't there to debate. She was there to conquer. Across from her, Kash Patel, a 45-year-old former federal prosecutor, once a nominee for FBI director, son of Indian immigrants, years spent hunting terrorists, silently adjusting his tie, measuring every breath. He looked calm, but in his eyes steel. Then it happened. Leavitt leaned forward, her tone, that same blade-sharp snarl she made famous in White House briefings. But this time, it wasn't just about policy. It was personal. Maybe it's time you stopped pretending to understand American values and went back to India, where you belong. The words didn't echo. They detonated. Gasps. Silence. A collective freeze gripped the studio. Anderson Cooper. Frozen. The audience. Shell-shocked. Social media exploded within seconds. Commentators called it the most racist moment ever televised live by a major political figure. But then, Patel spoke. No raised voice. No righteous anger. Just calm precision. Cold logic. A silence followed by a voice that cut deeper than her slur. And what he said didn't just silence Karoline Leavitt. It rewrote the rules of patriotism, of politics, of what it means to belong in America. She was 27, but her name already echoed in every conservative war room. Karoline Leavitt, raised in a blue-collar Catholic family in New Hampshire, taught to pray, work, obey. But she didn't obey. She rose. From St. Anselm College straight into the White House at age 24. By 25, she wasn't just answering questions. She was commanding the room. Trump's youngest press secretary in history, loyal, unyielding, armed with a tongue sharper than any spin room veteran. The right adored her, the left feared her. She wasn't interested in nuance. She was building a brand hardline, no-compromise conservatism wrapped in pearls and sound bites. Now, she had her eyes on Congress, not to debate, but to dictate. Kash Patel. His story began far from Washington, Queens, New York. Born to parents who stepped off a plane from India in the 1970s. No saving, no safety net, just a dream, and relentless grit. His father drove taxis by day, worked security by night, cleaned offices on weekends, all for one thing: to send Kash to school. And Kash didn't waste a second. He rose. Law degree, federal prosecutor, took down terrorists, put drug lords behind bars. When Trump needed someone who knew the shadows of national security, he called Kash. He didn't give speeches. He gave results. Ran operations so classified most Americans will never hear about them. When Trump wanted to purge the so-called deep state, Kash Patel was the sword. He didn't ask for praise. He didn't chase press. He served. He risked. He endured. But that night, on that stage, he wasn't in the shadows anymore. He was the front line. And what he faced wasn't policy disagreement, it was identity warfare. Two lives. Two Americas. One fault line. And they were both standing right on it. Anderson Cooper opened the night with practiced calm. The topic, national security. The format, structured, predictable. At least on paper. For the first 20 minutes, it looked like a standard sparring match. Karoline hit her marks. Border control, Biden's failures, immigrants flooding in. We need leaders who put America first. Our government must protect its citizens. The tone, familiar, polished, soundbite ready. Kash Patel countered with facts, not flair. Measured, unshaken. I've worked the front lines, I've caught the real threats. Terror cells, cartels. And I didn't read about it in a memo. I was there. He didn't grandstand. He testified. Experience versus slogans. The audience nodded. But Karoline, she didn't come for a draw. She came for blood. The moment Cooper mentioned the Trump administration's mixed record on immigration, she pivoted hard. Some Trump officials, she said, weren't tough enough. They didn't understand what real Americans needed. She turned to Patel, and the blade came out. We need people in government who truly understand American values. People whose loyalty can never be questioned. The implication, clear. The target, named. Kash Patel, but he didn't flinch. My record speaks for itself. I've risked my life for this country. I've protected American soil with my own hands. Karoline smiled. It wasn't gratitude. It was strategy. And then she twisted the knife. It's easy to claim loyalty, but real Americans don't have to prove it. It's in their blood. That sentence hung in the air like a fuse waiting for a spark. And that spark was just seconds away. Anderson Cooper shifted in his seat. Have felt it. CNN's control room. Silent. Producers watching with bated breath. Karoline Leavitt had crossed a line, but she wasn't done. She locked eyes with Patel, voice steady, blade sharper. When you look in the mirror, Mr. Patel, do you see an American, or do you see something else? The crowd gasped. It wasn't even a dog whistle. It was a foghorn. The room turned cold. Patel didn't blink. He leaned in, voice low, steady. Miss Leavitt, I'd advise you to tread carefully. The road you're walking leads to places this country has seen before, places we vowed never to return to. But she didn't stop. She doubled down. She came with this plan, and she would die on this hill. Some of us understand America instinctively. Others, they'll always be trying to learn it. The message was clear. American by birth. You belong. American by choice. You beg. That wasn't policy. That was a doctrine of bloodlines. It wasn't immigration. It was inheritance. Social media lit up. Hashtags exploded. Immigrant pride. What makes an American? Karoline crossed the line. Even Cooper didn't know whether to interrupt or let history play out. The camera caught Patel's hand still calm, but his eyes, focused, locked. The room was one insult away from combustion, and Karoline was ready to deliver it. Cash Patel didn't raise his voice. He raised the stakes. You want to talk about loyalty? Let's talk. Not with feelings, with facts. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folder. Thick, precise, documented. Karoline froze. She came with talking points. He came with a dossier. Let me tell you about my family. They arrived here in 1970. My father worked 3 jobs. Taxi driver by day, security guard by night, janitor on weekends. My mother, she scrubbed offices and raised other people's children. No welfare, no handouts, just hands blistered from work. They didn't demand America. They earned it. And me? I became a federal prosecutor. I fought cartels. I hunted terrorists. I stood in places where being American meant being a target. He stared at Leavitt. Cold, direct, unapologetic. So when you tell me to go back to India, you're not just insulting me, you're insulting every immigrant who ever bled for this country. And then he flipped the page. But I'm not done. Because the real story is yours. Karoline's face tightened, hair breadth shallow. Let's talk about the Leavitt family. You talk about deep American roots, but records show your family immigrated to America in 1892. From Canada, not Plymouth Rock, not the Revolution, Canada. He let the word hang like a courtroom silence. And it gets better. Your great-grandfather, Thomas Leavitt, denied entry twice, only admitted on the 3rd attempt. Why? Because he was broke. No job. No prospects. An immigrant, just like the ones you claim don't belong. The audience, dead silent. Karoline tried to interrupt. This is out of. Oh, but I'm not finished. Patel cut her off like a prosecutor silencing a desperate defendant. Because here's the irony, Miss Leavitt. That 3rd and final immigration petition, it was sponsored by an Indian-American businessman, a man who helped your family settle. A man whose legacy you just told to go back. The room detonated. It wasn't a rebuttal. It was a reversal. Karoline came with ancestry. Patel came with receipts. And in that moment, the crowd stopped seeing a debate. They saw a verdict. Cash Patel didn't yell. He stood, calm, straight. The entire room tilted toward him, like gravity had shifted. Real Americans don't judge by bloodlines. We judge by backbone. We don't ask where your grandfather was born. We ask what you've done for this country. He locked eyes with Karoline. Your great-grandfather came here with nothing. Denied entry twice. But he was given a chance by an immigrant like me. My family came here with nothing. Took nothing, gave everything. My father never asked America to prove itself. He proved himself to America. The crowd stirred. Some started to clap. But Patel raised a hand. Not yet. I've been shot at for this country. I've sat across from terrorists who wanted to see this nation burn. I've protected Americans I'll never meet, in places I can't even name, so don't you ever tell me that I don't understand America, because I've lived its risks, felt its weight, and chosen every day to serve it. He turned toward the camera, toward the nation, and now, you want to talk about belonging, then let's talk about what real Americans do. We don't divide, we defend. We don't gatekeep patriotism. We practice it. We don't say go back. We say stand up and serve. He paused. Let the silence settle. Then the final blow. Miss Leavitt. Before you question anyone's loyalty again, look in the mirror and ask yourself, what have you actually done to make this country better? He sat down. The room exploded. Applause. Shock. History in real time. Anderson Cooper leaned forward stunned. Karoline Leavitt, red-faced, frozen, beaten, not by volume, but by truth. The knockout didn't end in the studio. It ignited a chain reaction across the nation. And Karoline Leavitt's empire began to crumble. Within minutes of Patel's final statement, social media imploded. Patel destroys Leavitt, immigrant pride. What makes an American? The clip went viral before Anderson Cooper could even close the debate. Every angle, every sentence, every cold-blooded fact Patel delivered, looped, shared, exalted. Commentators on both sides had no choice but to react. Conservative d'honneur, gone. 3 major funders pulled their support by sunrise. Karoline's campaign manager resigned, citing irreconcilable differences on message and moral clarity. That's code for this ship is sinking. The New Hampshire Republican Party. They issued a cold, calculated statement. We believe American values are measured by service, not surnames. No names mentioned, but everyone knew it was a clean break. By the second day, her press secretary, communications director, and deputy manager had walked out, one by one. Some citing personal reasons. Others were more blunt. I cannot defend someone who just told people like my parents that they don't belong. Karoline tried damage control. A press conference. Scripted. Stiff. She stood behind a podium, but not a platform. I never meant to question Mr. Patel's American identity. I was simply pointing out differences in instinctive cultural understanding, but it was too late, too hollow, too exposed. The tape was everywhere. No context was needed. No spin could rescue her. Karoline Leavitt had been undone, not by an opponent's insult, but by her own. And the country had already moved on to the man who turned a slur into a statement of national identity. Within hours, his inbox overflowed. Speaking requests, media interviews, publishing offers. But this wasn't just about publicity. It was about presence. For the first time, millions of Americans who had never heard his name saw him, felt him, respected him. Conservative pundits couldn't ignore it. Liberal commentators couldn't dismiss it. Because Patel hadn't yelled. He hadn't postured. He had stood tall, told the truth, and let the facts do the damage. Ben Shapiro, no friend of emotional arguments, tweeted, "Never seen a cleaner takedown. This is what America First should actually look like." Van Jones, a progressive, stunned his own follower. Patel just reminded us that patriotism has no skin color. That's how you win with dignity. And then came Trump, silent for hours, torn between 2 loyalists. But when he spoke, it was a thunderclap. Cash Patel is a great American and a true patriot. Some people confuse America First with America Only. We welcome anyone who serves this nation with honor. Trump had spoken, and he chose Patel, not Leavitt, not the blonde media warrior, but the son of immigrants with the receipts. Fox News. Awkward. They had built Leavitt up for years. But even Tucker Carlson, known for anti-immigrant takes, paused his brand. What Cash Patel did wasn't just smart. It was American. He showed us all how you win with character, not chaos. CNN's ratings. Record-breaking. Their most watched political debate in history. Anderson Cooper. Stillstunded. In 3 decades of journalism, I've never seen a moment like that. It wasn't just a takedown, it was a reminder of what we should stand for. Across the Atlantic, the BBC headlined, "Indian American destroys racism with dignity." In India, the Times of India ran full front-page coverage. Immigrant son teaches America about America. And for Cash Patel, the moment wasn't about revenge. It was revelation. A courtroom of public opinion, and he had delivered the final verdict. Patel's response didn't fade with the news cycle. It ricocheted across the nation. In churches, on military bases, in immigrant households and veteran circles, conversations began shifting, not about policies but about principles. Republican leaders divided. Some tried to sidestep the moment. Others embraced it head-on. Senator Ted Cruz, he tweeted, "Patel just reminded us that values aren't inherited, they're demonstrated. Character matters more than ancestry. Service outweighs slogans." Governor Ron DeSantis, careful, calculated. "America has always thrived when legal immigrants embrace our values." A subtle nod, but the message was clear. Leavitt had crossed a line too many were no longer willing to defend. Even within conservative strongholds, Patel's name became shorthand for something new: authenticity, courage, clarity. Conservative youth groups that once idolized firebrands like Leavitt now replayed Patel's speech in classrooms. He wasn't a man of color. He was a man of conviction, and that transcended race ideology and generational lines. Immigration groups seized on his words. "We finally have a voice who understands both sides, border security and human dignity." Conservative think tanks, they found themselves cornered, forced to reassess talking points. How do you argue against immigration when the face of loyalty wears Patel's calm defiance? It wasn't easy to return to old narratives. Not after a man who faced real bullets, stood calmly on television, and took down racism with 3 decades of facts. Even liberals, once skeptical of Patel due to his Trump ties, began saying what was once unthinkable. You don't have to agree with him on policy, but you have to respect what he stood for, because he stood up when it mattered. What Patel proved that night couldn't be erased by party lines. He reminded the nation, there is no us versus them, when them includes Americans who bled for this country. And when he said real Americans don't gatekeep patriotism, they practice it, even the most jaded viewers paused. Because that's not just a clapback, that's a creed. In the days that followed, Patel didn't gloat. He didn't launch a victory tour. He let the country speak for him, and it did. With millions of reposts, thousands of op-eds, and one unmistakable truth echoing coast to coast. Kash Patel didn't just win a debate. He reminded us who we claim to be. His speech, now taught in communication courses, analyzed by political scientists, studied by campaign strategists. Not for its drama, but for its discipline. He didn't fight fire with fire. He fought ignorance with evidence, arrogance with legacy, division with data. He reminded America, your worth isn't inherited through bloodlines. It's earned through service. And that principle, it isn't partisan. It's patriotic. Karoline Leavitt. Her campaign collapsed like a tent in a storm. Within a week, she suspended her run, citing family considerations. Everyone knew the truth. She wasn't pushed out by Patel. She was pulled down by the weight of her own words. And as she faded, Patel rose, not just as a political figure, but as a national mirror. Immigrants across the country stood taller. Veterans, black, brown, white, nodded in respect. For once, America didn't debate whether someone belonged. It remembered why anyone can. The immigrant son didn't just survive the insult. He redefined what it means to carry the flag. One viral tweet said it best. Cash Patel showed America how to win a fight without losing your soul. And that's how legends are born. Not with applause, but with truth. Not with anger, but with dignity. Not with bloodline, but with backbone.